do your faith and your religion. Now I'm obviously raised as a Christian guy, and I go to Assemblies of God, and that is where my network is. That's my people. That's the people that made me who I am. In terms of the business, in terms of the networking, le bagolo hela, right now my parents are retired. They are back in Bobonong. I still go to church. There are still people that I look at as my parents, and they can speak into my life, and we go through that as a society where some people were not privileged to have their fathers in their lives, but there are so many male figures at church that do want to play that role of being a father, being a mother, being a grandmother, and you don't need to feel bad about my dad wasn't in my life. Not privileged that my dad was, and I share him with other people, go get a gang and all of that. So I think, yeah, I really want to emphasize what, if you're not part of that community, you should.
Yeah. Welcome to Moving Humanity Forward. Today we have definitely got a game changer, a trendsetter, a dreamer. That is who we have in studio. He was the first Motswana under 30 to grace the Forbes magazine. This is back in the class of 2020. He is an MD of a company that the last time we checked employed about 300 people, and he certainly has a story that we want to know. My name is Kathy Manajane, by the way. Thank you for joining us, and let's take this time to welcome to our set Mr. Thobo Khathola. Thobo, such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
No, thank you so much for the invite.
You know what? There's so much that I want us to cover. I think let's start just by looking at your journey a little bit, because you studied, and I believe you actually studied in South Africa, and then you came back home and unemployment happened.
Yeah.
take me through a little bit of your journey, and then let's talk about the business that got started.
No, thank you so much for having me. Awesome platform, by the way.
Thank you.
So, my journey started with unemployment. I think that's one of the things that really pushed me to start my business. And, being a person of faith, there's a scripture, the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. So, when registering Lion Tutoring, I never thought it would be what it is today. And
what did you think it was going to be? What did you think you were doing at the time? I mean, you couldn't get a job. What made you think? Did you think this would support you?
Yeah, well, this was something I thought at the time I would do Kentike Batlatiro, because I went to study actuarial science at the University of Pretoria, and I ended up graduating in economics. So my idea from graduating was I will get a job at a bank or a financial institution somewhere. And I did drop the applications. I did drop applications for internship, but none of them were successful.
Wait, when did you graduate? How long did you do that? And at what point did you start Lion Tutoring?
Okay, so I registered Lion Tutoring in South Africa when I was a student.
Okay.
So this was in 2014, a year before I graduated. So really, I graduated. I never really thought about I had registered a company in South Africa. It's just one of the things that we just did as students, to say, let me register a business. So first track, when I came back, I graduated, applied for employment, and I really got frustrated that I was staying home with my parents, and I wasn't getting a job. So I was like, you know what, let me start tutoring some students at church. So people were like, Thobo is good at maths, Thobo blindable mathsing, so that's one of the things that a lot of parents started to book me to come and tutor their kids at home.
Yeah.
So the more I did that, I was like, you know what, maybe let's register a business. So I did register it as a business because most people like invoice me. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
invoice? I'm not, it's not a company, send me your banking details. So I think all of those things really pushed me to really make it formal. And word got out really fast when kids started to pass, the mid-year exams, the end of month tests. So I got more bookings, and then that got me to hire more people because people wanted subjects like French that I've never done, accounting, history, So I started recruiting one by one, and today we are 300 and
Wow.
more. And
And
more.
more.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to talk about the branching out. And I just want to say this feels like a very full circle moment
Yeah.
because the producer on the show today was working with me in 2016, I believe. And he got me a gig to MC where Vusi Thembekwayo was the main speaker. I don't know if you were one of the panelists on the day or if you were just
I
in the
was on the
audience.
audience. Yeah.
And I
I wasn't big
remember,
at the time.
I remember at the time, I remember seeing your branding, but I also remember your questions, and you were talking about scaling up. That was something that, as when you talk SMME in the formal space, entrepreneur,
Yeah.
that's something you want to do. So I remember even afterwards you going up to him. What are the chances as we fast forwarded to now, what is your relationship with Vusi?
Yeah,
Are you his
Vusi,
relative?
such a nice guy. So yeah, like you're saying, I met Vusi the first time when I was with you. You were emceeing the event. He was a speaker, and I was only operating the business only for a year at the time.
Okay.
So he was talking about scaling, or how do you scale your business to other markets, etc. So fast track, I made the Forbes list. I got to meet him again, and now he's my mentor officially. And we do have one-on-one meetings where we just meet, go center at his office, and you'd really dissect our numbers, our business, how we can improve here and there. And yeah, he's such a big brother. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think back then, having entrepreneurs like him, Ghana, most of us were doing this first generation entrepreneurship. And to have somebody who has walked the journey and is able to advise you to say, I did this mistake. And that's the good thing about being mentored by Vusi. He never just shows you the good, he shows you the ugly.
He's not sugarcoating
Yeah, he
anything.
doesn't sugarcoat. He'll show you the ugly to say, I did this mistake,
Don't do it.
and please don't do this kind of mistake. Or if you are walking down this path, be cognizant of A, B, C, D, or Oscar well into the same problem that I did. So yeah, it's a full circle moment, like you say.
I definitely want to talk about scaling up and all of that. But let's come back to the basics of how it all started, because you said one of the first things you graduated in economics, but you were
Yes.
studying actuarial science.
Yes, yeah.
And Yaka Nobua, everybody's like, oh, you're good in maths, you're good in maths. I want to know the process of how you first started scaling up, and then I wanted to talk about how you've expanded since then.
Yeah. So I think just to take you a little bit behind, the one thing that I'm really thank God for was I got a job as a tutor at the university.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that is where the experience really started. And those Afrikaans universities, they make sure that they really teach us, they groom us. We attend workshops. They really put a lot into us perfecting our tutoring skill.
Okay.
So yeah, I got the skill from there. And once I graduated, obviously having seen the gap, I think I sort of ran it the same way that they run it in South Africa, which was different because they deploy tutors to students' homes, of which when I came into the market, even now, there are not many tutoring companies in Botswana that have that kind of capability ya go romella the
Yeah, in terms
tutors
of
to your house.
resources.
Yes,
Yeah.
in terms of human resources and the logistics. So having sort of cracked that code, we're able to have an upper hand on our competitors. Yeah, so that's basically how I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I
I
just
think you are,
veered
but
off.
we'll come back to it. And I want to, because I was actually going to say you never actually held a job down. And I think this, every time we've spoken about entrepreneurship has been one of the things to say, but how do you get in there with no working capital to start off with. So these are some of the barriers that a lot of entrepreneurs have when they think about starting a business. I definitely want you to get into that with us in just a bit. Don't you go anywhere. This is Moving Humanity Forward, and you find us on LinkedIn as well as on TikTok by just typing Moving Humanity Forward podcast. And then on Facebook, just type MHF podcast and check out this conversation. Don't touch that. Welcome back to Moving Humanity Forward. We have someone in our studio today that really inspires me. I think in Botswana, the unemployment rate for youth is almost 40%, and the general unemployment rate, the last survey was done, reflected about a 20% of our population as unemployed. Now, meeting somebody who's never held a job, okay? He says he only worked in high school, no, in tertiary, right?
Yeah.
And he pretty much sort of took the model that was used there and used it here to start his company, Lion Tutoring. I want to understand how, or in what world you started a business with no capital, or did you have capital? Did your parents invest in you? Did you take a loan? Tell us the secret behind it.
Yeah, I didn't have capital, no startup capital. So I'm the first of three kids. So at the time when I graduated, my two siblings were still schooling. So Tota, I didn't have any capital, and I didn't even expect my parents to,
Give
pop
you
out
any,
money
yeah.
because my siblings are still in school. So we end up having to bootstrap,
Okay.
So you do a job, you get paid, you use that money to do the next thing, and you just do that over and over and over again.
Tell me practically what that looked like. You started off with tutoring, right?
Yes, yeah.
Are you starting off going to the client? Are you
Yes.
doing it via Wi-Fi, which maybe you have at home? Like, what was the logistics?
So basically, at my church, we had obviously these meetings where I would be like, you know what, I'm available if any of your child wants a tutor.
Okay.
And obviously, somebody will call me and say, are you able to come on this day and this day, Kulaping? So the good thing is, I bought a car, a Honda Balade. 1994 model when I
Okay.
was still at school, South Africa. So
Okay, so your
the money I
stipend.
used to, yes, the money I used to get at my jobs that side. I worked as a driver at the university. I worked as a sales agent. I get loyalty cards
Okay.
for restaurants, and it was only on commission. Then I also worked as a tutor at the university. So those three jobs, I could be able to get, boma 3,000 to 4,000 rands a month, and I saved up to buy a car. In fact, I talked to one of my clients, gave me an advance, and I could be able to buy a car. So that car is the same one that I got when I came back home, and that was my office, everything, So when a client would tell me, "Hore, come to Pakalani twice a week for my child," I would be able to drive myself there and have the lesson. Then obviously I paid them in. I asked for payment in advance, and that money is the one that I used for other things like your marketing, print out flyers, stand at the robots. So I literally stood at the robots, distributed the flyers, and that got me more customers.
So give me a timeline. 2015,
15, yeah.
that's when you started.
Yes.
Okay, so you graduated 2014.
Yes.
2015, a year later, you're like, okay, something, I'll get the job, but let me do this for now.
Because when you are coming from South Africa, you are like, So when I Hanek hit school in December 2014, I came back January 2015. My graduation was April 2015. So even January, February, that's when I started. I started doing the tutoring, and by the end of February, the 23rd of February, and this year was our 10-year anniversary.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So the 23rd of February, I had been taking students, but I registered it officially to say this is Lion Tutoring. And then, that's...
Talk to me about scaling up, because I want to understand. I mean, most entrepreneurships start where you're the driver, the messenger, the labor, the manager, the MD, the CEO,
Yeah.
the founder. in one,
And you
right?
should be when you are starting.
So how long were you all in one? When did you start bringing people on board? You mentioned the fact that people started wanting French and other topics and
Yes.
subjects that you were not able to do. What was the process for you? And then let's talk BQA, because our qualifications authority in
Yeah.
Botswana, we hear the stories. We hear the stories about how difficult it is to get that certification from them. So
Yeah.
take me through that.
Yeah, so I did everything because you are employee number one, you don't have money to pay other people.
Yeah.
So, like, literally printing out flyers. So, in the morning, how my day used to look, because I was tutoring students which go to school in the mornings and come. So, in the mornings, I'd be making follow up calls to the parents to say,
Okay.
hi, you got a quotation, are you interested, and what can you pay, and I come to your house. So that was basically it. Then lunchtime, the kids are coming from school. I would have a day kids, or I'm going to tutor this child, then tutor this child, then tutor this child. I would have maybe 3 students in an afternoon. Then in the evenings, I would stand by the robots and distribute flyers because that's where the most traffic
Yeah,
was.
the
So
rush hour
social
traffic.
media wasn't really, or back then, a lot of adults were not on social media. So it was a thing of young people. It's not like now where church services went into social media because of COVID. Then you
Yeah.
have a lot of parents,
Yeah.
going on to social media. So back then it was just the flyers. So I'd stand by the robots around Boma 6 p.m., distribute the
Are you
flyers
doing this by
myself.
yourself? Do
By
you
myself.
recruit your friends? Are you
No, 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 no.
your
You don't have
sister, your
money. You
brother?
don't have money. And some of the time, they would even call while I'm doing that. So I would have a headphone from my
Yeah.
phone. It's an amwetse being. So I call it, and I would just stand at a safe space, answer, and then talk to the person. I say, when I get home, I'll send you the quotations, yada, yada, yada. After the call, back to the robots, distribute the flyers. My Itsubwa, like when around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, go back to my house and then start sending the quotations and doing follow ups again. So that was just my day,
How
every
long was
single
that
day.
your life for?
That was for 2 months, because after 2 months I started getting fully booked, meaning even the subjects that I could tutor,
You needed help.
I could only do so much in a day. So I started recruiting students from UB to
Okay.
help also with the flyer distribution, to help also with the tutoring, because some of them were doing Bachelor of Education. So I could recruit some of them and pay them reasonable wages, and then yeah, just deploy those guys. So very soon I got to a point where I wasn't tutoring anymore, and I was just doing the administration. So doing the collections, doing the payments to the tutors, and then at that gracious point, I now started to hire my own premises. So for the
How
first
many
3 or
months is
4 months, I was just working from the boot of my car. And then after that 3 to 4 months, when we could start now having an office, I found a place called Extension 4. That was our first office. And we made that into an office. And I lived in the back. So there was a back room that I stayed, and then the office was by the front. Yeah.
Okay, so this is still 2015 at this point, 4 or 5 months into operation. Take me through now the scaling up and the timeline of the scaling up. And then before you do that, let's go back to my question of how did you get the BQA qualification? Because I think that's a big issue.
Yeah, so with the tutoring industry, the more you hire people who are already teachers,
Okay.
you don't need a BQA accreditation because you are not a trainer.
Okay.
So the BQA accreditation is needed for companies which are offering AAT or
Okay,
accounting,
like
financial management, that
professional
would give you a
qualifications.
professional qualification. So what our service is, it's sort of an add-on from what students are getting from school. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we hire educators. So we sort of grandfather from your qualification, yeah, a UB graduate who has a master's in education or a PGDE. In that case, they are already teachers. And what we do nowadays, we even hire teachers. So people that have experience, teaching ko Tloga Tloga, kana ko Rainbow, or any of the schools, we start to recruit those people. So now they have the BQ accreditation in the form of their university qualification, and they also have experience.
Okay.
So the scaling,
Yeah.
that's
Let's talk
the
the scale
secret
up.
sauce.
Yeah.
So the scaling, basically, our secret sauce is the mobile application. So let's say,
Wait, but before you go there, what made you decide you wanted to scale up, right? You've got premises. I want to imagine you're doing fairly well.
Well,
You
yeah,
know, businesses. Someone else could have just, oh, this is cool. I can
Good
run this
enough.
for the next 20 years.
Yeah,
It's some
yeah.
money at the end of the month. It's a stability of some sort, plus minus.
I think that's the entrepreneurial drive. You want more.
Okay.
And, the moment, like in your business, you stop desiring for more, that is where other people are going to now start taking a piece of your cake. So with us, we started wanting more in the sense of making our service better for the students we already have, but even allowing more students to, hop
Access,
on and
yeah.
get a tutor. And, the pain point is hearing the stories where a student is frustrated because they've got this one tutor, not having a student have options. So those were some of our points that, parents would say, my child wants to pick their tutor. It's already bad at school that you are prescribed a teacher. You don't get to school and say, I want Mangrove over Mr. Sibanda.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
are given the teacher. So with the tutoring service, our children are afforded the opportunity to pick your tutor.
Yeah.
So I think with the mobile application, we wanted to get into other markets, and we could get interest. We had people go Joburg or even Pretoria, where I used to stay, to say, Thobo, you've left us. We want your service.
Okay, so this is now from your previous job as
My
a
previous job
yeah.
as a tutor and just the networks I made. So yeah, we got into other markets, Palape, Francistown, and then Pretoria, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within a span of how long?
Within a span of less than 5 years.
Okay.
Because, when COVID happened, it showed, like, it opened our minds to say, somebody can be in Cape Town and be tutored by somebody in Mogoditane
Yeah.
over the internet, and they're happy with that tutor. So it showed us the possibilities. So that's when we started offering the online tutoring. And we could even cater, because our mobile app, it works like Uber for tutors.
Okay.
So wherever you are, if we have tutors in that location, you will tell it the subjects you want, then it will show you the tutors in that location. Then once you open the tutor profile, you see the qualifications, what they did at school, etc. Then you pay on the app, then we send the tutor to your house. So just that simple technology, it is what has helped us to get into other countries in a short period of time.
I love that, and I actually want to ask you so many questions. You're speaking about the technology assisting you and so forth, and just you mentioned time and again to say the entrepreneurial spirit is something that really got you where you are, right? But I want to find out, in your family, is entrepreneurship a thing? Because I mean, maybe if you saw your parents, I don't know, selling in a shop or
Yeah.
something, what did you have that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
No, in the sense that both my parents, before they retired, were lecturers, and even in our extended family, they were working formal jobs. So we didn't really have that uncle o e leng gore he's entrepreneurial. What they did is, we always had farming. So my dad, re na le polase ko Bobonong, like a farm, and we used to farm sugar cane,
Okay.
and meroho, your tomatoes, your butternuts, etc. So during school holidays, they would load up a bakkie full of those fresh produce, and they would sell it, in Gaborone. And they sort of tried to keep us away from that. But
Yeah.
being a boy, you want to go with your dad, so
Yeah.
you cry until he says, "Okay, let's go." Then we'd stand there. Just that somebody is buying something, there's change. If somebody pays with 5 pula, you need to give them 2 pula back. Just that, entrepreneurial exposure. I think it's a seed that was planted but without them knowing and without them wanting, because
Yeah.
they didn't want
And
us to
I asked
suffer.
that because I think a lot of the time there were there was sort of a shame, if I can call it that,
Yes.
of, oh no, I can't be the one selling. You
So,
know, that
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that we had that in our mindset because just white collar jobs with that was it. You were made, right? And
Yes.
if you were anything else, it just we looked down on you. But now, of course, in hindsight, I think that was brilliant
Yeah.
because it kept you on your toes,
It's a
right?
seed. It's a
So
seed.
I want to touch base on how this actuarial scientist, economist, turned into an entrepreneur who is a tutor. I mean, it comes from the family, but we'll talk more on that. Stay with us. This is Moving Humanity Forward. Welcome back. It's Moving Humanity Forward, and we have this actuarial scientist slash economist who's turned into an entrepreneur and really first generationally, intentionally, if I can put it that way, though he did have a bit of a background in terms of entrepreneurship from his family. Thobo, I think one of the things that's come out as we've been speaking is that, yes, you did have a bit of a background, but you just said to me as we were speaking behind the scenes that even God, gives you tools to prepare you for entrepreneurship. So break that down for me, how that works. And also, I mean, speaking of God, it looks like the church was a large part of your network, especially in starting, and that they were the base as far as your customers were concerned when you started. So take me through that and what you've picked up from the church and having faith.
Yeah, the one thing I can say is business is spiritual. Yeah, business,
Why do you say it's spiritual?
the amount of stress that you get, the amount of meetings or deals that happen, or that don't happen,
Yeah.
it's really spiritual.
Okay.
It's really spiritual, and the more we can get in contact with our spiritual, that and the first thing before I get there is knowing yourself,
Okay.
knowing your purpose, why God has put you in this little planet called Earth, and the moment you can understand what has God commissioned you to do, it becomes so natural. I'm a communicator. I know how to communicate concepts, break it down to students, and that is the reason why I do well as a tutor.
Okay.
And that's one thing I saw. This is where God really wanted me to be. God didn't want me working for somebody else, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are certain people by now who they are doing well as employees, but no, that's not my path. So the moment you understand the reason why God has created you, you'll understand which business to start or which venture to go into. And just mental health, we really need our mental health. Whether you're an employee or you're an employer, you need to really be in touch with your mental health, because if you don't, you can't be able to balance. Now I'm balancing family, my relationship with God, business, my relationship with my parents, my relationship with my siblings, my relationships with my employees. There's a lot to juggle. Health, we spoke about health
Yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
And your health is your wealth. But if you are in contact with, or if you are in connection with God, there's a lot that you can be able to optimize, or there's a lot that you can get out of yourself, if as opposed to somebody who's not.
Yeah.
So I think business is really more spiritual than anything.
Okay, so those are some of the things you got from the church. What now about people who don't have faith? What would you say to them, and how would they go about self-awareness? Would be a huge tool that
Yeah,
works for them.
yeah, yeah.
What else? What else? And then also you talked about stress and just managing stress. Take me through a little bit about that, and I hope we have time to talk about the story of how you paid Mahadi and the stress management that had to
Stress manage,
happen at that
yeah,
time. Take
yeah.
me through that.
Yeah, I think like you spoke also about the network of the church. I can't speak on other faiths and religions, of which I'm not saying, they don't exist. They are there, and if you are raised in that way, do your faith and your religion. Now, I'm obviously raised as a Christian guy, and I go to Assemblies of God, and that is where my network is.
Yeah.
That's my people. That's the people that made me who I am, in terms of the business, in terms of the networking. Le bagolo hela, right now my parents are retired. They are back in Bobonong. I still go to church. I still there are still people that I look at as my parents,
Yeah.
and they can speak into my life, and we go through that as a society where some people were not privileged to have their fathers in their lives, but there are so many male figures at church that do want to play that role of being a father, being a mother, being a grandmother, and you don't need to feel bad about my dad wasn't in my life. Not privileged that my dad was, and I share him with other people, go get a gang and all of that. So I think, yeah, I really want to emphasize, if you're not part of that community, you should.
Yeah,
You should.
so the faith plays a large part of it.
Yeah.
I want to also know in terms of the education system, right? It's a perception I have. I think maybe you can clarify it for me that government schools versus private schools, in terms of uptake, it's higher in private schools versus government. Is that a reality? And if so, why do you think that's the
It's
case?
not a perception, it's a reality.
Okay.
Students in government schools are not doing as well as students in private schools. First thing you talk about, Kathy, is the student to teacher ratio. In private schools, it goes as low as about 20 students, sometimes even less than to one teacher. So, and these teachers, mind you, ke Botswana, they were trained in similar institutions. It's not like the one teacher has anything special, or the teachers in private schools have anything special. And most of the time, they're paid pretty much the same wages, but it all boils down to those nuances. Student to teacher ratios that go as high as 50:1 in government schools.
Sure.
You talk about resources in private schools. There are certain resources that the students in private schools they have. You talk about internet, of which nowadays it's been introduced in schools.
Yeah.
You talk about computers, even desks. There are students that unfortunately have to share desks. There are students where only the teacher has a textbook in government schools. Then how does the student go and study for the next upcoming test if they don't have a textbook? So those are some of the nuances that you look at. And you look at the pass rates. What are the pass rate in government schools? Okay, let's not look at the pass rate. Let's look at how many students are going to university,
And where they're coming from.
yes, right now, out of 36,000 students this year, only 10%, or just a little bit above 10%, will make it to university. What is going to happen to those other 32,000 students? Some of them, yes, their parents will have enough money to sponsor them to brigades or to other institutions which don't have as a high cutoff point as our University of Botswana, our Limpopo, or the big universities, BAC, etc.
Yeah.
But most of them are going to be found in the streets. Most of them are going to be found without purpose. They're going to revert to things like crime, etc. So, it's a reality that we are living in. You look at private schools, their pass rates go as high as 80%, and these are credit pass, so ABC. So even students with D's and E's, they have passed, but it's rare that you'll get them in private schools.
Yeah.
Private schools usually get them in that top tier. So, to parents watching this, spend now. If your child is in a government school, you can still get them a tutor.
Yeah.
And it's usually not even that pricey, at least so that they can be able to achieve their academic goals, get admission to university. Then you sit back. So most of us, we want to cut costs now and say, I don't want to afford my child a tutor, but you don't know. Now the second year, now they're going to rewrite. It's going to be more costs, and it's going to frustrate the student.
Okay, so I want to branch this off in two ways. To first of all find out about qualifications in terms of the teachers you are bringing on board. How do you know? Because hey, the times we're living in, we can fake anything, and I can be a doctor and everything.
Yeah, especially in South Africa. We do have operations in South Africa. So what we do is we partner with HR agencies, which they have applications where they check criminal records. So you find somebody has an authentic degree, but they have a criminal record. We don't want to send that person to your house.
Yeah.
And also what they do, they also verify your university qualifications. So if you say you have a master's from the University of South Africa, they'll take that degree or that master's, and then they'll check if it's authentic. Then we'll get a report to say this is an authenticity report from this platform that we're using. And we now, with the advent of GBV and rape, we saw the protests that are happening in South Africa. We are even calling for governments to release those sexual offenders list
Registries, yes.
registry, so that we can see, or if somebody 10 years back was accused of rape and was convicted, isn't that the same person we are going to put into a school just because they have a master's of education? So we really are calling for governments in all countries to really release those in real time,
Yeah.
so that we can see who is it that we are not going to work with, even in the public education sector.
So you're not going to work with people who have been listed on
No,
there?
no, 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 no. That's a huge red flag for us. In South Africa, even our recruitment is as advanced that even if you have a pending case, we don't prefer to work with you. There are some people that they don't have a criminal record. So if you go to SAPS or Botswana police, you'll find that they don't have a criminal record, but they
Because
have
it's
three
still
pending
pending.
cases of rape, or three pending cases of whatever the case may be. In South Africa, the systems are so advanced that you can pick up those pending cases, and then we exclude those kind of people.
I want to know about partnering, because now if you're talking about how it's not so good in government schools, have you not thought about working with the Ministry of Education? Because this has been a call for at least the past decade, where the results get worse and worse and worse every year. And I want to believe with your help that could be reversed.
Yeah, if they're watching this podcast, they should subscribe, click the bell icon, and call Lion Tutoring. Yeah, well, we are open to working with them, but I mean, look, if
Have you
they,
worked with them before?
yes, before we have the Ministry of Education, both here in South Africa. We've been deployed to certain schools to help them to catch up the students for the exams.
Give me some testimonials.
We've worked with Mogoditsane Primary School, but that was sponsored by FNB Foundation.
Wait, so what do they sponsor? They sponsor your time?
Yes. So they would adopt a school,
Oh,
in
okay.
essence.
Yeah.
So they would say, Lion Tutoring, what's your invoice to deploy maybe 20 tutors to take care of these 200 or 300 students, maths, English, and science. And we would have KPIs to say, if the school is performing at below 50%, our target is to get them above 75%. And we actually have done that with Taung CJSS, where they give us a clear target to say our students are getting 49% credit pass. We want to take it up beyond 70%.
I like it.
And when
Go
the results
Ramotso.
come out, at Ramos, hey, can I hear from? At the
Letebele Sonyana.
I live for that punchline.
It will come.
So yeah, we've done that. We've done Philip Moshotle, but Philip Moshotle, the primary school, the parents were paying.
Okay.
So we were brought and would say the parents are paying, invoice us for that, then would be deployed to that school. So there are so many instances where we've worked with government schools. We've worked with SOS. We've worked with Childline before. So we are open to working with and collaborating, because Tota Botswana, we have to do our social responsibility, but even us, where we need to mobilize, we need to be mobilized.
I like that. Now, I want to talk a little bit now about competition, because we've seen there's a mushrooming. In fact, let me not say a mushrooming of this business. What I have realized, especially in Botswana, when we see somebody doing well in entrepreneurship, we don't say, oh, this woman is selling tomatoes. Let me come and sell onion and green pepper. We
Yes.
say, oh, she's selling tomatoes. I'm coming to sell tomatoes.
Yes.
What has been your experience as far as, can I say, copycat and just other people? I mean, aren't you technically in competition with schools?
Yes, we are. We are. But the thing is, like you are saying, it's the same thing of not being able to collaborate. We all sell maguinya at the same. No one thinks, can I sell fresh chips? drink juice, whatever the case may be. So that is unfortunately where we find ourselves. But remember, we are entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs have to look at, there are so many people entering into the market. How can I differentiate my service from the rest? So like you're saying, there's been a lot of mushrooming of tutoring companies, and that's fine. They also want to
You're not
make.
worried about competition?
Nah, we don't worry about competition. We worry about the customer. What
Okay.
does the customer want? And the more you can be more customer obsessed than competition obsessed, then we actually on top of the game. So remember with us, the one point that customers would say would, I want to have my tutor come to my house.
Yeah.
Most of our competitors, if not 90%, they still have the student going to their centers. We also have that for certain packages, but most of our packages, we go to the student's home. Then the other question that the students would say is like, I want to pick my tutor.
Okay.
So that's why we launched the mobile app to say, here's the mobile app, see the 10 tutors in your location, then you can pick the one that you want based on, sometimes it's smaller things like gender. Somebody will say, I want a female tutor to come tutor my daughter. Whatever the case may be, they are not comfortable in having that conversation over the phone. But if you give them the application, they're able to pick that tutor on the application. Yeah. So be more customer centric.
Focus, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're gonna need to bring in the issue of the wife, because I think she played a large role in all of this.
Yeah.
The timeline so far is that 2014 December you finished school, 2015 you started the business around February,
Yeah.
2017
I got
you're
married.
now. Oh,
Yeah.
when do you expand to South Africa?
I expanded to South Africa in 2017.
Okay.
Same year we got
Okay,
married.
so
Yeah.
take me through the timeline. So 2015 you started the business.
Yeah.
I want to imagine this is around the time you met the wife.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, my sweetheart. Horata, if you're watching this. Yeah, I met her in 20 end of 2015, 2016. And yeah, it was love at first sight for me. And the good thing is we go to the same church. So even when we met, she was going to the same church, and a lot of our values were similar. It was just here and there, just a bit of differences like any other person. But, we took the decision to get married in 2017. So, like, she's played a huge role in Lion Tutoring. Like, even before we got married, I actually brought her to work in the
You
business.
headhunted your
I
wife.
headhunted her. Like, how much are they paying you at work? X amount, we'll put something on top of that. And she came in, she worked as admin. So I did a lot of tutoring at the time, but she stayed at the office, doing a lot of admin, checking that clients are happy, receiving payments and all of that. So yeah, that's basically how things worked. And as we were recruiting more people, it was easy because we were training them as to lay off more of our core functions. So if maybe we need somebody to take care of the students, would hire somebody and would train them to say, this is how you take care of the students, this is how you take care of the customer service, etc., etc. Yeah.
I want to get into more detail at some point. Maybe not now.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll invite her to the podcast.
Because you told me that you met at a funeral, and you're the third couple I've heard of who met at. I'm like, should I start attending funerals? But we'll talk about that
Yeah.
at some other point. I just also, before we let go of the wife story, do you work well together? And how does that
Yes.
work? Because I've always had this doubt or trepidation to say, if you work with your partner,
Yeah.
what happens when you fight at home? What
It comes
happens
to
at
work.
work? So how do you work it?
Okay, the time we were actively working together at the office, we have two different personalities. So I'm more of choleric personality, driving. I don't care about people's emotions. She's the opposite. She doesn't care about, results and time. She takes her time, but she's more on the
People.
emotion, people centered. So I think those strengths, the moment we saw that her strengths, her weaknesses are not really weaknesses, they are my strengths, we become a better team. And yeah, the moment, at first we used to fight a lot because now it'd be like time, hey, let's go, bam, bam, bam. And then she's like, relax, and most of the time I wasn't really paying attention to how I made people feel, customers, employees, but she would be the one to read those kind of nuances. So I think we've played our strengths to each other, and we know where to take work home, and to be a family, be a couple, and be colleagues at work.
Yeah, I definitely want to explore this more. You have children now?
We
Two
have
children?
two beautiful girls, yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to explore the work life family balance because I think you mentioned earlier you now have so many relationships.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about that at some point. Now, let's move back to this timeline. 2017, you got married, you started expanding. I want to know how much support you got in terms of exporting your service, right? Because in Botswana, we've been talking about having our economy be export led, especially
Yes.
private sector grown, export led. I want to imagine you have technically exported a service to not only South Africa, but I believe this year, 2025, you branched out to Nairobi, Kenya as well.
Yes.
So talk to me about that. And then while you're at it, I'd like to just get you to paint a bit of a picture on the differentiation between Southern Africa, our education, versus Kenya.
The East Africa, yes.
Yeah.
So basically, in terms of support, my shout out goes to the banks.
Wow. The
The
banks.
banks are such support. The bank there's no emotions.
Yeah.
There's no politics.
It's the black and white.
It's black and white. So
is
you
true.
do your financials, it makes sense to the banker, they support you with a loan. The only problem with a loan facility is it's not for entrepreneurs, because month one is due. You have to start paying back
They
the
don't
loan.
care
So
that you need
it's
time
equity, yes. It's not patient capital like equity. So unfortunately, there's not support in terms of the financial institutions that are supposed to be supporting entrepreneurs. Well, personally, I haven't really benefited anything from them, but
Did you try?
yeah, we have. You hear the stories sometimes, and you're just like, you know what? Let me just work with my banks.
Yeah.
I have a good relationship with my bankers. Sometimes I even pay the facilities before they are due.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Ella, that's how the ecosystem is, and you hear the stories. They are as
Yeah, so you didn't try. You heard the story and you're like,
you
no,
hear the
I'm not
story
trying
and
to
you're
have
like,
my
I'm not trying
idea.
to. Yes, I tried once or twice, early stages of the business, but we'll see. Hopefully, with this new dispensation, things will get better. And you talk about the exporting. It's so easy to export our service because it's an application. We can load tutors in Nairobi like we have now, and people in Nairobi can subscribe for our for our service, and you are able to pay and deploy the tutors. And the education system that side is slightly better. Why? Because it's a mindset. Kenyans really love education.
Yeah.
A Kenyan would literally sell everything to take their child to the most premium school and have nothing. Unlike us, you'd have your big cars parked at the government schools, and
Yeah.
that side is different. I would have my Honda Fit parked at the most premium school because that is the investment that I can make in my child's future.
I know I'm out of time, but I cannot let this conversation end without speaking. I know I'm name dropping at this point. We
Yeah.
did speak about Vusi Thembekwayo and the
Yes.
work that you do with him. Quickly, in about a minute, just take me through some of the work that you're doing with him.
Yeah, so Vusi has a mentorship program called the VT Club 100, which I was privileged to be a part of, and it's so easy to be a part of. I don't know why people don't just go onto the website and subscribe, because the amount of support that he gives us as entrepreneurs, there's no money that can that you can pay for that kind of somebody giving you their experiences, good and bad. It's like having a big brother. I'm the first of three kids, but I don't have a big brother. And for me, Vusi is that, big brother to say, my man, I've done that, it didn't work. So tread with caution, or do this, it works. And it has really saved me a lot of having to learn the thing myself. So there's a lot of us, all parts of the world. There's American mentees of him, people in Dubai, people in the UK, people in Asia and African continent. So it's like a beautiful ecosystem that we're in, and we do business amongst each other.
You know what? Let's do this. Why don't you like? Why don't you comment? I don't know if I can say if we get 1,000 likes, we'll call you back.
Yes, yes.
Hopefully with
They
the
should put
wifey.
even the questions on the comment
Right,
section so that we answer them in the
because
next.
time really is not on our side. But it's been an absolute blast, and I know we absolutely need another one. Let me just say 1,000 likes and a couple of comments. The questions that you want Thobo to answer for you. Hopefully, if we get those 1,000 likes, we'll also get wifey in the studio with us so we can have this conversation about how they work together as a couple. But yeah, do that. Moving Humanity Forward podcast on LinkedIn as well as on TikTok, and MHF podcast on Facebook. We'll see you next time.